Hi and welcome to the third section in this course. So now in this section, we are going to go through one of the services which is available on AWS for managing containers, and that is the Elastic Container Service. So in this video, we are first going to go through the architecture of the Elastic Container Service, because this is important if you are planning to use this service in AWS. So first, what exactly is the Elastic Container Service? Well, AWS released this service for management of containers on the cloud. So in the prior chapters, we have actually seen how does Docker work, how does Kubernetes has an orchestration platform for containers work, and how we can actually deploy Kubernetes to the cloud on EC2 instances. But if you want a completely managed service, so you don't want the facility or the ability to actually manage the underlying software to manage those containers, then you can use the Elastic Container Service. So this helps you manage your Docker containers in a cluster. So in the end, Docker is still the most popular tool for managing containers, and hence this container service can also be used to work with Docker containers. It helps you manage all your container-based applications. So you can deploy a host of containers that actually comprise of your applications. So you could have an application that has a web tier and a database tier, has containers. You can collectively deploy this as an application on the Elastic Container Service. So one of the key advantages of using this service is that you don't need to install and maintain the underlying orchestration software that is used for managing the containers. So this is one of the biggest advantages, and it's a key overhead reduction in terms of administration for containers. So now let's go through the architecture in a little bit more detail. Now, the first key thing we have is something known as a task and the task definition. So the task definition defines several aspects. One key aspect, please note, is the Docker image. So in the task definition, you say what is the image that is going to be tied to this task. So the definition will then see what is the image specified. It will then actually pull out the image from a container registry and then deploy the task with that image. So one of the key aspects here you mentioned is what is the image that's going to be used. Next is how much CPU and memory that you want to constrain for each container, and what is the type of networking that has to be used for the underlying task. Now, there are different networking modes. In our demos, we are going to be using the default Docker networking mode. So now via diagrams, let's try to understand the architecture of the Elastic Container Service in a little bit more detail. So I said the first thing you do is a task definition. So here you mentioned the image. So you could have one task definition that says, please pull out or use the image for Nginx. You could have similarly another task definition which says, please use Apache as the underlying image. So now you have two task definitions. Then what you can do is that for the first task definition, you can actually create a task and then you can assign it to a cluster. So the cluster is responsible for managing the containers in this container service architecture. Similarly, for the second task definition, you can assign another task and assign it to another cluster. Now, please note that you can use more than one task definition for the same cluster. Just for the sake of understanding, I have actually segregated the task definition, the task and the cluster. Now, again, when we come back to our task definition, task and cluster, one very important key to note is about the task. So in the task definition, I said over here, let's say we're specifying the image as Nginx. Now, when you actually deploy this as a task, the task will actually go out to a container registry system. So the most popular one is Docker Hub. You can also use the Elastic Container Registry, which is available from AWS. So what this task will do is that it will actually pull out the image from Docker Hub or from Amazon ECR and then deploy it to your cluster. So please be very sure when you're actually specifying the image name in the task definition. This is an important aspect. Now going more into the container service architecture. Now when we come to each task will be assigned an Elastic Network interface which will be used for the underlying communication. This will then be assigned to a particular availability zone, which can be mapped to a particular VPC. So now when we actually go and create a cluster in AWS, you will actually see that the container service will automatically create the subnets for you. So there's a wizard which is specified, and it will create the VPC for you. So all of these underlying components which is necessary for the deployment of the container service will be deployed for you automatically by the container service itself. You can then have a service which encapsulates this entire task, and the service can also be used for exposing, as you've seen in earlier chapters, your containers to the outside world. So you can do this via the service. Now, there are a lot of other things we can actually do with tasks and services, and we have separate chapters which dwell into the details of how you can manage tasks and how you can actually manage your services.